I wanted to also talk about the nuclear deal with Iran. This is obviously another piece of the Middle East puzzle that we've got going on here, and there's a lot. There's a lot that's going on right now, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of this later. But I feel like there are some shenanigans afoot. I think that there's some obvious misdirection taking place. There's some obfuscation. I think that there are some games being played that I think is very scary. But I wanted to talk about this article because, and this is not surprising, 70% of Americans support a nuclear deal with Iran. So talk about this. This obviously, everybody should support a nuclear deal with Iran. It's insane to me that we're poking that bear. But tell us about this.
Yeah, Misty, this is, I think, very important because it's not only 70% of Americans and 3/4 of Democrats, but it's 2/3 of Republicans who are saying that they want a new nuclear deal, and one that just ensures Iran won't be able to build a nuclear weapon, which is, of course, what the 2015 JCPOA did, the Obama-era Iran nuclear deal. And so it seems that there's a pretty consensus American endorsement to go back to that. Now, the problem is for Trump is that might not be politically something he is willing to go along with, just because he vacated that deal in 2018 saying it wasn't strong enough. But that's as good as a deal as America is ever going to get with the Iranians, because the Iranians aren't trying to build a nuclear bomb. No. They just want sanctions relief and to maintain enough of a nuclear program that should Israel or the United States go to war with Tehran, that Tehran could then develop a nuclear deterrent to make sure that their country isn't wiped off the face of the earth, which I think is a pretty reasonable policy to hold. And also, this is the same kind of nuclear program that Brazil, Germany, Japan all have. And again, so this isn't out of line with the rest of the world, what Iran wants here. I think it's a normal thing that a country wants, particularly if it has reason to fear particular threats. Now, I thought another interesting part of this, Misty, was only 25% of Republicans actually want to go to war and try to settle the situation that way. So, Trump's plan to go to war seems to be deeply, deeply unpopular.
Yeah, with his own base too. And I think that he has to recognize that. Like, he's not an idiot. I think he behaves as one, but I think he for sure is very in tune with what his base wants. I think he's very good at knowing exactly how to speak to them, tell them what they want and need to hear, all of that stuff. So I think that he for sure is aware of that. Whether or not he cares, I don't think he does. But it's very clear that his base is very much against military action here, military action in general. I think the MAGA base, generally speaking, not all of them, but generally speaking, they are very much against interventionism. They're very, they're not interested in getting involved in another war for other countries. And that's exactly what we would be doing here. So I think that that's definitely, it's a positive. I just don't think that Trump cares, right? I don't think that he has any intention whatsoever of listening to his base, of giving a shit what they have to say about anything. I mean, he's proven that time and time again. But yeah, we look at these charts that you have in this article, and you just talked about how, military action and attempt to destroy 24% of Republicans are against that. And that's great. I think, and I don't know what polling would have shown prior to this. But I think that that's got to be up, right? This is something that previously the Republican Party was very much on board with going after Iran on this issue. And that we should also mention that you said they're not trying to build a nuclear weapon. We know that that's the case. Our own military intelligence has been saying for a very long time, there's zero evidence that Iran is trying to build a nuclear weapon. Not that I would blame them for doing so. They've seen what happened to Gaddafi. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've seen the way that we operate when there is no, deterrent or whatever. So yeah, I think it's, this is good. It's good to see. Here's another one of the charts that you have in the article. It's good to see that,
so this one I think is really interesting and important too, and this is why I included it. It's asking Americans what they think the preferable situation in the Middle East is. Either Israel having nuclear weapons, Iran having nuclear weapons, both having nuclear weapons or neither having nuclear weapons. And neither having nuclear weapons got
Huge.
70% of the total, right?
Yeah.
And only 10% of Americans, I think it was 21% of Republicans and 5% of Democrats, said that they think the best situation is for Israel to have nuclear weapons. Of course, that's the status quo. Now, how many Americans actually know that Israel possesses nuclear weapons? I would guess it's definitely under half, and probably like maybe around a third or 20% or something like that. It's not very high, but we could see that that policy is not preferable. And I thought it was interesting that 7% of Republicans and 6% of Democrats said that if Israel has a nuclear bomb, then the best situation is for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And so, you know, just Americans thinking on this, I think is far more nuanced and understandable than our leaders' just dogmatic position of the foreign policy establishment that we're going to cover for the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons and pretend they don't, and demand that Iran can't even have a nuclear program capable of enriching uranium for civilian purposes, because that could mean one day they could use those same capabilities to build a nuclear weapon.
Yep. And I think that that's also this chart is super fascinating to me. And I think it's great because and I think you're right. Most people don't know that Israel has nuclear capabilities at this point. And I had a friend, actually, a member of Jewish Voices for Peace, who confronted Robert Kennedy Jr. on this at I think it was one of the events he was doing with Rabbi Dildo. And Rabbi Dildo ended up taking over and like shouting down the protesters and like screaming. They're like, "We're not even talking to you. Shut up." But he did as he does, and Bobby just sat there like a little sheepish little boy, like letting this guy speak for him. But they confronted him about the nuclear weapons that Israel has and whether or not he would confront them on that or make any changes or whatever. And of course, he said no. So I think that a lot of Americans are completely unaware that that's the situation. But you and I have talked about this. And we in the interview I just did with Hamid, we talked about the shift in consciousness on Israel has been drastic over the course of the past couple of years. There's been a major shift. I think a lot of people are now asking questions they weren't asking before. And so I think that we're starting to see in the polling, which, I mean, you can take polling for what it's worth. I mean, obviously it's not, you can't really count on it to be legit, accurate. But I think that there's no question we're seeing that kind of a shift in the polling and in public consciousness. So that's really good stuff.
Well, in one important point here, Kelly Vlahos made this earlier this week on the Kyle Anzalone show, and she pointed out that if you look at, you know, the polling shows this as well, but also just the comment section online, it's young right wingers who are, if not opposed to the Israeli genocide in Gaza, certainly opposed to the American support for it, the U.S. paying for it, the U.S. losing our reputation on this. And these are people who have influence and are very good at using social media, right? Like, as much as I'm not like a MAGA person or a fan of right-wing trolls necessarily, the MAGA crowd does it very well.
They do.
It sways public opinion quite a bit. And so I will be interested to see. And I think it's going to be funny because Ben Shapiro and the pro-Israel, the woke right crowd is going to respond exactly the same way the woke left did. And we see how poorly that went for the left. I think this is a big part of how the American left lost the culture after the first Trump administration, was just, going so hard on these woke issues and, denouncing all their critics as sexist and bigots and racist and things like this. And that's exactly what you have happening with Ben Shapiro and the whole, pro-Jewish crowd, pro-Israel crowd crying anti-Semite at every.
Please clap.